welcome. My name is Piers, CEO of RDX Works, core developer of the decentralized finance protocol Radix, a public ledger entirely focused on bringing DeFi to the mainstream. Today, we are doing the Radix Roundtable, which we do roughly once a month. With me today, I have Adam, CSO of RDX Works, Matt, CPO of RDX Works, and Russel, CTO of RDX Works. And we have some great questions from our Telegram and Discord community that have been coming in. Some are to do with the bear market and some are to do with our technology, but they're all great questions. So it's great to be able to sit down and have a chat, bring everyone together and give you guys our more nuanced thoughts. So first question is, bear market question. It looks like Radix is aggressively hiring and pushing the marketing despite the current market. Has any Radix entity conducted further fundraising since the token sale? And are there any concerns about how a long bear market could impact the funding up to Xi'an and beyond? This is a great question. So we've always been pretty defensive about our treasury. We've never really speculated with it. And so as a result of that, having been through like 3 bear cycles now, we've always been quite defensive during bull cycles. We've taken OTC deals when they've been available. We're also exploring other avenues at the moment, which we will announce if they're bigger ones that we do. But yeah, generally speaking, we're pretty confident in our treasury levels to get us through to what we need to do for Babylon and what we need to do beyond that. And so, yeah, no concerns there particularly. Next question. Can we get a debrief of the Brave campaign? What was the process of putting it together? Curious about decisions and if you think it was a good investment. Adam.
So the Brave campaign has actually been in the works for many months as we scaled it up. So many of you have seen the standard Brave advertising we've been doing. We've been testing that out, different messages, seeing how different audiences work. And at this point, we wanted to really see if we did a very broad campaign to an audience we know is crypto interested, at least, how would that work? And one of the really cool things you wanted to test, and we've already seen, is that would people convert from just seeing a quick thing and increase Radix awareness? And so far, anecdotally, the answer has definitely been a yes. So we've seen people come into the developer channels and onto Reddit being like, hey, I checked out Scripto because I saw you guys on Brave. We've seen people in the kind of token holder channels being like, hey, I checked this out because I saw you on Brave, which is all really, really positive. The other thing is the design work by our design team for the 3 images was spectacular. Not just biasly saying that, we had loads of people comment. That was really good. Even Brave themselves said it was amazing. They came back with basically no revisions to our initial draft. And what I loved was that people in our community, some of you watching this may have even answered. I said, what was the message we were trying to get across? Like with the basic plane to the jet, the typewriter to the computer, etc. And this idea that we may not be the inventors of a concept, but we're trying to take things mainstream. That was the goal, and that seemed to get really well communicated. What could have gone better is obviously the market not completely tanking the day previous. That would have been ideal, but these things are booked months in advance.
Someone did say, and I thought it was a good point internally, which they said, well, in some ways, the fact that it's on Brave at the point that the market is tanking is bad. In other ways, everyone in crypto is opening up their browser at the moment to look at the market. So
and then looking for something to distract them immediately afterwards. So.
Right.
True. Silver lining to every cloud. But yeah, the other good thing is Brave do a lot of like uplift surveys and stuff for campaigns like this. And we saw solid uplift of kind of Radix awareness, recognition of things like Scripto and the idea of a DeFi engine. So this is all really positive for us. And it was a test campaign to see if something this broad and this high scale worked. And there's definitely learnings we got from it, but I think it went really well just anecdotally from what we've seen already picked up from that.
Yeah, solid. So next question is, what is the team doing regarding partnerships for Babylon? Will the previous partnerships with Ren and Chainlink be used? What do you look for in a partnership? Matt, why don't you take that first?
Yeah, I mean, I guess our approach to partnerships is a little different than a lot of other projects. there seems to be like an emphasis on like, I don't know what I would call like vanity partnerships that you'll see. This, I guess it's starting to actually get better, to be honest. I mean, like a few years ago, this was like everything. It's sort of like, look at this wall of partnerships that we have. And then you find out that most of them were just like, they went to a party together or something. Like it was very, very thin. And I think people start seeing through that. They start realizing like this isn't a relevant, strong metric of true adoption of the platform. Are you going to be successful? Do people actually value your platform in some fundamental way? And so, I mean, partnerships are a fine thing, but basically we're approaching it from the point of view of like, what are people that are actually in alignment with our vision? They actually bring something to the ecosystem where we can provide them some special help. I mean, an actual partnership where there's both sides are seeing some benefit out of it and we can work together and get a better result out of it. I mean, so this is generally how we approach it. I don't think we have any like specific announcements about like, Babylon specific partnerships that we're working on. We're definitely still talking to Chainlink and the Ren guys. I mean, this is a partnership, it's like, we don't, they've got their priorities and we've got ours, and we're working with them to kind of get things done on the appropriate schedule. So there's nothing specific to say, but I definitely expect there'll be some additional partnerships as we get closer to Babylon, because I think we'll start getting to the point closer to the end of the year where you'll really feel like, oh, Scripto is real and it's really about to move on to the public network. And so people are going to start thinking about real projects they want to launch and start talking to us about it. And, I'm sure we'll find some partnerships that we want to help people out with at that point.
Yeah.
All I would add to that is obviously can't name names for many of the discussions we're having, but like even this week I had an intro call with someone who cold called into us wanting to have a conversation. We are, and like that was a great connection.
Yeah. And they were a brand everyone would recognize. They weren't like, as in like a DeFi brand everyone would recognize. So yeah.
And so them coming in, one, it's feedback, and some of this is like, to echo Matt's point, there's commercial decisions in when partnerships are done, how they're integrated. And there's also our key focus at the moment of building developer enthusiasm within our existing community. Right. And these decisions come through and they've got to feed in and benefit all parties involved.
Yeah, and there's also a lift versus reward thing. Like the earlier you bring someone in, the more of a lift there is, because you have to build all of the materials and everything earlier in the cycle than you'd want to. You have to bring people up to speed because you have to also then take them through where the technology is going to be rather than where it is right now. And so you end up, for really strategic ones, you can do that extra lift, but you have to be really careful about going, this is worth distracting one of our engineers for a week to do this, versus just being like, well, let's just wait. And then when all the documentation is out there, way easier to actually push that down the road as well.
Yeah, not only does it have to be alignment, but they probably need to be a big name. They need to have a lot of credibility. There's a lot of other stuff that's like that makes this like, all right, this is worth us dedicating some resources to have a formal partnership that we would announce.
Right. There's the other thing that I often talk about as well, which is like we really do want to see, Radix network, Radix community creating some big names themselves, and part of that is giving space to our own community to step in and build, the Uniswaps of Radix, the Aves of Radix, the synthetics of Radix, the compounds of Radix, the MakerDAOs of Radix. That's really critical as well, because no one's going to be as core to the community as the people who have built up from the community, who really have bought into this idea of how we're building in a different way with Scripto and how we're building in a different way with asset-oriented programming. So it's not so much I've got to do this, we're an EVM thing, I've got to re-implement it in Scripto, but instead being like, oh my God, I get to build this in Scripto, which is like actually what you want to be working with as much as you
And it's accessible to more people. Or to build a safe thing is much easier in Scripto. Right. So it's the level of healthy fear a person has, I'm going to go release a financial application, is if you go try Scripto, you'll find your healthy fear calibrates at a much lower level than it does if you go to build something in Solidity. So it's not so much that, we have to get somebody who's one of the top 10 people in the world that knows how to do a safe financial application. It's much easier to do safe things on Scripto. We don't have to worry so much about getting that very small set of people who can do so safely right now.
Yep. Another thing, just to dig into what Piers said even more, is like supporting projects that are already in the community and are having success in building their own communities around them is really important. Like just launching as a brand name in a new chain doesn't automatically guarantee success. And like some of the things that say like AussieSwap are doing at the moment is fantastic. They're building a community around them. They're creating their own partnerships. They are getting people interested in what they're building. And that is essential to success. And that's what we want to celebrate across the entire ecosystem, not just have someone come in and being like, hey, I'm an existing brand, put me as the star of the show.
Right. AussieSwap is here because they really believe in what they're doing. They think it has value, and not because they wanted to get a press release or because they were trying to get free development out of us or whatever it is. Like they're here because they want to be here, and that's what we want to support.
Next question. In light of Luna UST depeg, can you shed any light on internal discussions the stablecoin team has had around this event? Has it changed your thinking or research at all? What directions are you looking for the stablecoin? So I actually went into this a little bit in the AMA with Dan that I did earlier this week. So if you guys want to see what Dan and I think about it, have a look at that. I'll briefly go over here as well. So stablecoins have been a part of the Radix DNA basically since it was started. It was a core concept that Dan was looking at. It was actually how me and Dan bonded. It was the first thing that we connected over. And things like the Luna USTD pegging and the death spiral and the emerging death spiral that occurred, certainly things that we have simulated before, that we've gone through models that have these problems before. And I'm not saying that we have all of the answers. And I think that a couple of things that were key here that was already a big part of our thinking was one, the importance of the secondary market versus the primary market cap versus traded price. A $10 million sell can move $100 million of market cap if it happens at the wrong time, which gives you this idea of like the difference between, ostensible value, like, the market cap of Luna versus the market cap of UST versus actual value when you start seeing aggressive trading out and the market withdrawing liquidity. Those are the key things to think about. I think that stablecoins are still very I think most stablecoins are naive to some extent. I think that the one that that Radix proposes, if we do come up with a model that we're sufficiently happy with to propose as a potential, we'll still have elements of naivety to it. But I think that the some of the things that are happening in decentralized derivatives are really interesting, because what's clear is you need to have ways of having a counter whatever your collateral is, a way in which you can hedge the exposure in the point that the collateral is going down in value. There's a lot of things in derivatives that are coming out that I think are going to be interesting there. And I think there are some like better models out there for secondary market liquidity incentivization, like the Fay model. Even though they had some real trouble at the start, I think there's some really interesting things in what Fay has done. Probably one of the best white papers I've read in the space, just in terms of how they think about it. So if anyone hasn't checked out Fay, I do recommend them. Obviously flawed from the point of view of their bootstrapping problem, which caused them, all of this pain afterwards. But, at base, I personally, and with the stablecoin team, think that decentralized stablecoins are important, at least for a period of time for these public ledgers, because they allow the potential of much faster acceleration of adoption of these technologies. Because if you don't have good representations of currency on platforms, in all currencies, so it's not just dollars, it's in all currencies, then it makes it difficult for the mainstream audience to actually really understand what they're buying into, and as in from the point of view of the things they're trying to access. Stablecoin is only a transit It is only a settlement currency for value. Most people aren't going, I want to buy the stable coin. They're like, I need the stable coin to be able to buy this investment, to be able to get this, product. And the stable coin is just this vehicle for holding value. But if it's not in a currency that they understand, you're just not going to see it hit mass market in the same way. So we have a lot to say at some point about stable coins. Whether or not that ever ends up emerging as a stable coin, a Radix stable coin system, we don't know yet. It's still in research. The main thing I'd say is that the big difference between whatever the Radix system is and the Luna system is that it's capped, right? The stablecoin reserve is the maximum amount it could ever increase in total circulation. You can't get to a point where you have this death spiral in which everything has hyperinflation. It would never be designed in the way that the Luna UST system has been designed, because that was a decision that was made right at the start when Luna launched, and similarly Radix made a decision about a capped total supply right at the start, which already put both of these networks on very different paths.
I get the sense you put a little thought into this.
For anyone who knows me inside Radix, I literally occasionally I'll go off and write a 40-page paper and then circulate it internally. But read this, and everyone's like, Piers, why are you talking about stablecoins? I'm like, please read my paper.
It's typically long flights, Piers. If you have over an 8-hour flight, I expect a stablecoin proposal by the time you land.
Yes, this is true.
Which refers to other stablecoin things, which I also have not read the white papers for, which then goes down this rabbit hole of, okay, now go read up on these other 4 projects. I'm going to
right, because you have it's not just every single one of my papers relies on knowing 7 different deep topics in DeFi as well. It's I'm pulling all of these bits in. Yeah.
Words you've never seen. So periwig is applied to what is periwig? And you can't go Google this because it's not a well-known thing. And then you go find it's a financial thing from the accounting part. Lots of fun.
Very clever though.
Maybe. This is the thing, is you never know, right? You never know. I think there's too much belief in one's own cleverness when it comes to these systems that often ends up being the downfall of these systems. The other thing that I think is constantly not addressed is that people go, this is what happens when it's good. And then they go, yeah, and if it doesn't work, we just don't really, we don't look at that. That's the nasty point. So we're not going to deal with that dirty bit. We're just going to deal with the good case. Here's the good case. Doesn't that look nice?
Now I'm just thinking of the Homer Simpson meme with the bulldog clips on his back.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. From this angle, it looks perfect. Right. Really, really good.
Right. And I honestly think that we're only going to get to stablecoin systems where the stablecoin system has both success case, but also elegant failure cases as well, in which it goes, well, if it fails, then it fails in this way, and also thinks about what happens if price goes down as well as if price goes up, and if price goes down for a considerable period of time, all this kind of stuff. Anyway. And
in fact, someone, and in the case of someone is manipulating it to profit on it going down and trying to induce that to happen.
Right. Which, in a big enough system is the only thing you can do is cap the risk rather than completely mitigate the risk. But yes, for sure. Much like civil protection. Anyway, we digress. Those are my small thoughts on stablecoins.
If you join RDX Works, you can hear many, many more thoughts just like this on at least a monthly basis.
On the next roundtable, we'll cover part 2 of stablecoins.
If anyone would like to suggest some code names to Piers for his future stablecoins, that would be much appreciated, though, because that is a talent he doesn't possess for them.
I was bored. Adam's referring. I wrote a stablecoin paper that I nicknamed Project Olive because I was bored, and mainly because there was a concept in it called olive branches that just tickled me the right way, and so everyone was like, "This, it can't be called this." I'm like, okay. All right. Next question is, earlier this month, Vitalik received a white paper about how Web3 DAOs and identity may look in Ethereum in the future. He introduces the concept of soul-bound tokens and souls. This paper reminds me of Radix badges. Russell.
Yeah, so really, we're going to aggressively summarize this till you can think of it as One of the concepts was, NFTs on Ethereum, people are trading around. And so he proposed this idea of a non-tradable one where once it's assigned someplace and you could associate things like I have some characteristic about me, like I'm a member of this thing or something like that, or this is part of my history. And because you can't transfer it, then you'd say, okay, I can now choose to treat this as a reliable record that, this person is who they say they are, or whatever things are being claimed by this NFT can never be transferred to someone else. And I don't know how many times people link this to us in Telegram and then people submitting emails and in Discord. And we just look at it and go, yeah, the crypto resource system, you get this for free, and not just non-transferable, but selectively transferable. You can have rules based on, if you have the correct authority badge, you can, transfer this token, or I can maybe have a period where it's like, well, under certain circumstances, it is transferable. Other ones, it's not. And all these things, we weren't necessarily specifically thinking of this exact use case. It's just that we wanted a nice, generic, powerful model. So it was a little odd to read that white paper and like, here's all this thinking and how it could be achieved and all that. And we're going, of course you can do that. That's just part of it. We have powerful rules around how resources can move, how they behave, rules on how they behave, and all those things are in the hands of the developer to control. And most importantly, all those rules can also be surfaced to the consumer. So it's not that you're just talking to this opaque smart contract and, well, I don't know if it really is non-transferable. I've just been told that if it applies to this data, it is, you can actually see. And in your wallet, you'll have a notification that this resource can never be transferred, or there are only specific rules under which it can be transferred, so that the user is made aware of, hey, this is not just we always use the term for like the most basic tokens. We think of it as just like a pile of rocks, right? You can easily subdivide it and you can push it around and all that kind of stuff. If the token is anything that is not a pile of rocks, as in more may be created, or there's restrictions on movement, we surface all that in a way that a wallet can expose to people. So we love the concept of you could have some non-fungible token, say, assigned to, it's held in an account that I control that can never move out of there, which shows my membership in a thing, or the fact that, it was a collectible that I attended this sporting event that issued it, and I can show forever I was there because I can't transfer it to anybody else. So it proves that I was the one who went to that concert or who saw that football game or whatever it is. And that's all easily achieved with just changing the rules on how that resource can move. So we love the concept. It's just one that you don't have to think hard about on Scripto. You can do it with literally one line of code if you wanted to make a thing never withdrawable.
And I think a lot of the thinking about the utility of this is dead on. I mean, like we're definite believers that when you start getting into Web3 notions of identity and so forth, like these things will be encoded as NFTs and they will carry history, and those NFTs will be elaborated and added to and so forth. And you'll be able to sort of accumulate a sense of identity in this tokenized form. It's just the cool thing is like that kind of direction is what went into the design of the asset model to begin with. It was just the idea like we need to have that kind of flexibility. We don't want to build a system where every time someone has a new idea for like, oh, here's a new thing that we can layer onto identity or something else. Now we need like another EIP standard. Now we have to re-implement that, and everyone has to, rewrite their smart contracts to make use of that new interface. Like, why can't you just define a resource that has the flexibility of being able to do that stuff independent from the resource itself? So like, we just have metadata on a resource. You can use that for whatever you want, and you can define who has the ability of changing that metadata, which means you can set up contracts that like, yeah, this particular entity is the only person that's able to change this piece of metadata that represents your educational history or your attendance of some event or whatever it is. We just do that by separating the business logic from the resource, which is one of the mantras that we always talk about. So totally agree with the direction of the whole thing, and we think we've actually got like a more flexible way of doing it just by nature.
I think that there's like, for me, there's like a mind expansion point here that like I always find a little bit mind blowing when you like realize what is done here versus how it's done in the old way. And it's this idea that like you have the ability to define an object, and then you have ability to assign specific rules to that object, which means that if those rules are granular, you can use any combination of those rules, right? So let's say that you have 20 different rules that you can apply to that object, your actual possible combinations of things is like 20 factorial, right? So it's like an insane number of different ways in which you can create object sets with specific rules. Now, that would seem complicated from the point of view, that would be complicated. And apart from the fact that these rule sets against these objects go all the way up into the user interface. So now and they are inherent features of the platform, which means that there doesn't have to be any agreement for every specific combination of those rules. The rules are all instantly accessible by every single wallet, by every single implementation, instantaneously. The minute you create that combination, it will work in every wallet. It will work for every user, and every user will understand what it is, and every Dapp will be able to interact with it. Now, take that concept and strip it away and go back to what Ethereum's doing, and they are saying for every single combination of rules that we want to create, we have to create a standard. For every single one, it has to be a separate standard. That standard has to go through an approval process. That approval process is the EIP process, which can take months, if not years, for every single standard. That standard, once it is agreed, then has to be integrated painstakingly into every single platform and into every single wallet and into every single exchange. And each point of those, you end up having problems and failures because you have to integrate this new set of interfaces that wasn't understood before, and that the security paradigm of it isn't understood either yet. So the amount of effort that is required just to introduce a new way of creating an object on top of Ethereum is absolutely monstrous. And it's not just because of the creation of the little program and the security problems in that. Let's forget about that. Let's just go with this idea of creating a program for a new type of object, and then all of the social coordination that is required after that to make that now a successful user product. Like, you start to see quite how big a hill Ethereum, or indeed any public ledger, Near, Polkadot, Avalanche, anyone who's using this model of the ledger not understanding objects or rules, and it's merely just being a little programs inside, that then you see how difficult it is to accelerate or expand the use cases or objects that are useful to people. Now, Vitalik is writing about this because he sees this particular set of objects and rules that's a really good thing. We should make that, because it would be great if we can have something that is not tradable, right? That we have some ownership of the thing, that we went to a concert or an event, and only the people who went there can have that because it's tied to them, not something that's buyable, something that's more intrinsic than money, some experience or something that was important to them. Now, that's really important from the point of view of reputation and other secondary systems that are important in society. So 100%, like World of Warcraft built this into their system because they understood that players valued things beyond players just being able to buy their way to certain stats, right? So yes, 100% what Vitalik is suggesting with soulbound tokens is a use case of the absolutely huge universe of potential use cases of objects and rules against those objects that specify how those objects can move on a ledger. But it is such a bad way of going about it fundamentally on Ethereum. And this is that's sort of the mind-blowing point for me about when you look at this Radix Engine Scripto model and you're like, oh my God, like just the speed at which something can emerge. So someone like Vitalik comes in and goes, well, this would be a good idea. And it goes from idea to in people's wallets and actually being real things that people can use. Like, that is what is missing in DeFi today. That's the thing, this institutional inertia that is so difficult to get over because of the social coordination problem that exists after someone's come up with a good idea that just goes away with Radix. So super exciting.
You don't need the influential figure. If you're just the independent developer who had a great new way of, whatever the rules are on the object movement or whatever it is, you don't need that influential figure to get anybody to pay attention to you. You could just release some component that uses this resource in that way, and everyone again, as Piers says, can instantly interact with it. It goes, wow, that's really good. And it'll just take off on its own. You didn't have this to even get off the starting blocks to make it work at all. You have to have this proposal approved by whatever the governance body is and so forth.
Right.
You just release it and it can be used. And if it's good, then you don't have to have it promoted at that point. It can grow on its own.
Right.
Yeah, this is literally how we approach the use cases when people, it's like, how do you do this? How do you do that in Radix? It's like literally like, okay, cool. Can we write a component that achieves the result, the use case that you're trying to talk about in a way that didn't require us to re-implement the idea of token? It's something like, is there something that basically we can use the existing sort of the bits of configurability on the resource itself, and we can load whatever arbitrary, interesting, complex logic you want to build in a way that's separated from the resource, but remains clear so that it's still just a resource. Like any other resource, the wallet still understands it. Anyone else can interact with it. It still works, where it makes sense. It still interacts with dexes. It still does all the things you would expect a resource to do, but you are still able to achieve the thing you wanted to do. And the cool thing is almost all the time we get a use case and go, oh yeah, cool. This fits into the model. You just write a component this way and you'd use a transient resource and do this, and boom, it's actually more elegant than doing this. And every once in a while we run a use case and we go, oh, that's interesting. That's actually a little bit difficult to do. And this is what's been influencing the Scripto roadmap, is then stepping and go, well, why is that difficult? It's not, and the solution to it isn't like, all right, now we need to now this is going to be a separate category of thing that we implement in a special way, and we're just going to duplicate the way you do in Ethereum. We go, this probably indicates that there's some gap in one of those, the 20 rules of, sort of thing that Piers was talking about. Is there one of those that's missing? It's like, actually, when you think about it, real resources have this additional behavior that you would expect intuitively that actually we haven't included in there. And so there's been a couple of cases now since the creation of Scripto, since the beginning of the year, where we've gone yeah, there's actually a really interesting gap here. And it doesn't just solve this one use case. It opens up this whole class of use cases because it's based on expectations of how resources move rather than trying to solve point by point problems one after the other. It feels a lot better. The solutions that come out of that end up feeling a lot better because they feel much more flexible rather than being like, all right, now the whole thing is going to break once you want to add one more feature onto it. Right.
I sort of think of it as a little bit like a game of life. There's 3 simple rules, but with that you can build everything. It's really cool, and every single rule adds a huge amount more flexibility of things that you can create off the back of that as well. So yeah. Question from Reddit, which we're going to summarize because it was a long one.
As you get from Reddit.
Sorry?
As you get from Reddit.
As you get from Reddit. I love Reddit. Reddit's great. It's a great rabbit hole to go down. But some people write things that would be an incredible blog post just as answers to
if I had one wish that was not crypto related, it would be that everyone who uses Instagram instead were magic to the wonders of Reddit. I think the world would be a better place.
The knowledge sharing that happens on Reddit is unbelievable.
Yep.
So I'm very curious how Dapp developers are thinking about the concept of tech support and customer service, because mass adoption seems like a tough sell without addressing the needs of less tech-savvy humans. Do you have any insight into whether the goal is to address customer service tech support at the protocol level as much as possible, or do you think that private companies will emerge to offer support to bundles of protocols, or might cooperatives coalesce? Good word, coalesce. Will DeFi Web3 ever have customer service? Matt?
Yeah, absolutely will. I mean, it's a customer service isn't sort of a quaint notion that's going to go away. There's a reason why people want this. And I don't know, one of my general statement, this gets to just a general approach to DeFi, is that if you force people to compromise to something, they're not going to move to the new thing. It doesn't matter how wondrous it is, but if you kind of go well, before you had this, now you're going to give that up, but you're going to get these 2 other things. Almost no one's going to move to that thing. And so customer service isn't going to go away. And so, I mean, agreeing with the premise of the question is that DeFi is not going to go mainstream for a large number of users until they can get customer support of some kind, whatever is appropriate for the application. And I guess from my point of view, there's nothing about Web3 or about DeFi that is incompatible with that. It's just, I guess a lot of people tend to think of it in terms of the smart contract itself. It's sort of all right, there's a smart contract and that's the Dapp and that's Web3 and it's there. But there's always a system that's wrapped around that. There's always, there are the creators that deployed that. There's the people that are building front ends to it and so forth. And as this gets more and more mature, I think all sorts of forms of customer support are going to be wrapped around these on-ledger things that exist out there. I mean, we can envision a bunch of different things, like you can imagine, something that looks and feels very much like a banking experience to someone today, but actually behind the scenes, it's based on a bunch of completely decentralized DeFi protocols and so forth that's providing things in a nice way. And there might just be like a traditional entity that's sitting in front of that's like really trying to solve a good problem for certain sets of people. And they've got a call support line, and they provide all the things that you would normally get, but they've got a more competitive product because they're basing the thing on DeFi protocols. And I can imagine DAOs, sure, absolutely. I can imagine certain things where it's sort of like that's the important problem to solve, where it's like, yeah, we want to have something where there's a community that's providing support to people. From my point of view, all these things are possible. There's nothing that we really need at like the protocol level for this. If there's something where you do want to have, hey, let's get into Vitalik's idea about like Web3 identity based on an NFT. It might be that when you kick off a customer support call, they're looking for proof that you have a certain NFT that indicates that you were a user of this system. And they can just see that on Ledger, and maybe you have to sign a transaction or something in your little chat window that proves, oh yeah, I'm a user of your system. And then great, now we'll spend the time to help you go through something. So like, my point of view, the world's your oyster. All these things are going to be possible. Absolutely, I'm expecting to happen. It hasn't happened so far because, we're in kind of the move fast phase of this, where everyone's just deploy protocols, try stuff out. Customer support expectations are low. People would rather just move quickly. They're very tech savvy. They're willing to experiment. So it hasn't really been the problem to solve, but it'll absolutely happen as this goes mainstream. I think it'll just be natural.
I think some of the things as well that do happen, like if you look at some protocols, like you can get support on like their Discord channel or something, but the user interface is so complex on the entire system that makes it really challenging to even support people. And like, even if you look at, say, some of the questions we get into, like hello@radixdot.com, for example, like it's hard to help people because they don't know what information to provide to actually help them. And so then there's a lot of back and forth. And I mean, what is your view, Matt? Do you think things like the transaction manifest help surface information that makes customer support even more viable?
Sure. I mean, transaction manifest, and also just the fact that you have, I can imagine a customer service portal that's just a Dapp. Like it's a Web3 Dapp, and like the first thing you do is you connect your wallet to it. The wallet, essentially vouches for your identity. It authenticates you. It also allows the user to, I'm thinking a little bit about future stuff here, but allows you to share, hey, these are the relevant accounts for this customer support session, and allows the other person to say, all right, I'm going to dig into this for you. They automatically have the information they need. Like, this is all stuff that you can't do in Web 2 that they would love to do, but they just don't have the technical tools for it. This is one of the wonderful things about doing things on a decentralized ledger, is that you can allow you can't allow this. You can have ownership of assets and identity, but allow users to directly connect to things in a way that they prefer. So yeah, I think there's some really cool stuff that I expect will start happening here. But it's not going to happen with MetaMask, because MetaMask is awful. But it's like, it's.
If you think of Red Hat, like you can run Linux for free, but the larger the company gets, the more you want to, I have a support contract. If I have a problem, there's a phone number I can call and someone will get on the phone and help me with my problem. Maybe there's a team of people behind that phone. That's, of course, as it becomes more palatable for businesses to do business on public ledgers, as they feel regulatorily safe and they feel the technology is proven out and so forth. Of course, companies will spring up to do, hey, we will support your use of, maybe it's this following set of applications on Radix, that's a well-proven model in the enterprise space already. So of course we'll see it as adoption increases.
There's a saying that I like, which is that first time entrepreneurs obsess about product, second time entrepreneurs obsess about distribution. And the thing that hasn't happened in Web3 DeFi yet is companies really having to fight for their supper. Like, if you've built a good DeFi app, because there's so much green space, because there's so much capital, you will get TVL. Now, a lot of companies, a lot of DeFi dApps would argue with me on this. They say, we work really hard at community building, we work really hard at brand building and all that kind of stuff. And like from the point of view of like token economics, token proposal, I absolutely agree. That's being, made into a fine art with certain ragged bits to it. But from the point of view of actually just taking a everyday customer and bringing them through a funnel and getting them to a conversion point, Web3 is so behind what the best in class for sort of Web 2 and mobile apps are. Like we're just not even the same. We're not even the same league. We're not even the same, ball game, right? So and this is just my personal view, is like what often happens in industries is you end up getting layers, and each of the layers is responsible for some form of distribution to the next level up. And I think that the consumer layer is actually going to get quite a lot separated from the Dapp layer. I think that what you're going to end up having is you're going to have consumer applications that focus on a particular subsection of consumers that they're able to capture a large audience for, and that then they will give different product offerings that are available within DeFi to that audience, and will expect some form of feedback from the dApps for creating that distribution in the first place. Well, like what you see in the insurance markets, right? Where you're at the bottom, you've got the reinsurers, and then you have the insurers and the captives, and then above that, you have the agents, and then often above that, you have things like the websites and the brokers and stuff like that. So like there's lots of layers where each layer aggregates the layer above, and there's some fees that are taken. Now, a lot of people might point to this and say, well, that sounds like intermediation again. We're getting away from we're disintermediating, and now we're getting back to intermediation. I think that distribution is going to be key, and there isn't currently money flowing into distribution in the space. The advantage of a public ledger is that anyone can come along and compete for the same set of customers and provide a better service for a lower cost, and that competition is much easier to mean that sort of fat fees that are coming from creating a shitty service just because you have the regulatory perimeter to do that in that country and only a few companies have got it is going to go away. So competition is going to increase, but from the consumer point of view, that distribution is going to be important from the point of view of all the hard things those distribution channels have to do, such as customer service, such as customer onboarding, such as education and training, such as creating that engagement in the first place. So I think what's likely to happen is you're going to see that the really good Web3 dApps in DeFi are going to aggregate very large amounts of liquidity across many channels, and and their own primary channel on their website is going to be less important. So you won't go to Uniswap directly. You'll just end up using Uniswap or OsciSwap via other interfaces that all aggregate that liquidity onto OsciSwap, and that creates a much better liquid market on OsciSwap. But the consumer doesn't ever have to know about it. That's not where the support lives, and you'll end up with having different types of support as well. The OsciSwap team will be supporting integrations, not end users, and then the people who are doing the integrations will be supporting the end users, but will have that support from the OsciSwap team when they need something that's going wrong with the integration or with the data or something. So I think that there's a lot more complexity to come.
This is really cool. Like, I love the idea of there being these open backends. Like, there's this resource that's available on the network that it's aggregating liquidity, it's aggregating functionality that does really useful things, but it's completely open, and it's available transaction by transaction. So it's not as if, all right, okay, we've built this, this database, and we're signing these big contracts with these individual providers that we allow into the service. Like, the bar can be so much lower, so that if you did have, like, let's say there's like the OsciSwap trading backend that's aggregating all these things, it's like they can be completely open about it. Like, some guy that just has a great idea about how we can make use of it can just tie into that transaction by transaction, pay the fee they need to do that individual transaction, and they can have 1,000 customers, and they never had to sign a contract with any of them, but they're still getting paid. They're still like providing functionality, which it leads to just orders of magnitude more competition between people that are trying to target individual users, individual experiences, support burdens, all these sorts of things.
Let's say that OsciSwap gets to $2 billion in volume a day, right? Imagine as a startup trying to go to an exchange that does $2 billion a day and go, hey,
Right.
I would like to integrate my front end into your exchange. And they go, how many customers do you got? You'd be like 10. They'd be like, go away. We're not interested. Whereas with this, it doesn't matter. In fact, it all makes the whole stronger and better.
Mm-hmm.
So
Not intermediation, it's value add intermediation, right? Otherwise, people won't use it. It's not like it's a necessary thing. It's if your intermediation makes it more valuable, it gets customers or makes them happy to use the product, then that was good intermediation, and it's fine that you then take some shave of this or fee or whatever it is. That's
But
they weren't
I'd say that's
required
just
to use you.
Mm-hmm.
that's just choice. Like
Right.
the big difference is you have a choice as a user. So I'd say already customer service to me is just one part of like customer experience or user experience of interacting with the system. And there is a value add. So to give an example of say like something like a travel agent. Nowadays you can go and book your flights by yourself, your car rental, your hotel, your villa, whatever. But some people might then be like, that's going to take me a lot of time and research to do that. I may pay a 5% commission to a travel agent so I can just ring up and be like, I want to go on holiday to this place on these dates, sort it out for me. And that is a value add because you're buying time from that. Or with Piers' example, the insurance aggregators, for example. Like, I want to get insurance. I don't want to go and get a quote from 50 different insurance companies. It will take me a day. I'm willing to pay a tenner to someone who will add that as a commission to sort that out for me.
It's not a tenner.
That's
by
just
the way.
one layer.
It's like 30.
Let me believe.
30
Let
to
me believe.
40% of your premium. Yeah.
Let me believe, Piers. Let me believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, in DeFi, you can then choose. You can sit there and be like, hey, here's this nice packaged up thing. And you can go, actually, I think I could do this myself and save that extra 10% or, in this example, 60% by doing it all manually. Sure, go and do it. There's nothing stopping you.
Mm-hmm.
But it just makes people have to add value in the service they are providing to an end user.
Yeah, they got to earn it. There's no rent seeking. There's no monopolies.
Yep.
Right. And I think that's the key. That's the key, because if someone's creating a valuable service that's attracting customers, there is some value that they're providing above and beyond the cost to the customer. And that always has to be true in these systems, or we hope that it maintains that for as long as possible. Last question. What are the most helpful activities that community members can do running up to the Babylon release? Russ, start with you.
Give us good, interesting, thoughtful use cases. That is always, we love nothing more than, I got an idea to do a thing. And even if it's, especially when someone comes from, like, I have no development background anyway, but what if we had this that come out of this? And then I love to always go through those and go, okay, even if we don't go to the point of writing it, like, how would we accomplish this in Scripto? And it's always, it's quite unusual that we've had one that we can't think of a nice, elegant way to achieve it. But it's also, these things lead to the creation of patterns that we'll promote. If we think like this is a good way of accomplishing use cases like this, we can now make that a design pattern and push that out to people so they understand. A lot of times, the way you most commonly see this is someone comes into the development channels from, in Solidity, you do it this way. I want to do the exact same thing. And then we kind of push them to, okay, well, what are you trying to accomplish? Don't try to do it the Solidity. Like, what's your end goal? Right. And now let's make it an asset-oriented way to do that. And that's how we came up with the whole concept of the transient token, the non-depositable thing that allows asset-oriented flash loans. So giving us interesting use cases, even if you don't have any development background or stuff, is stuff we always love to see. And related to that, anytime you come in with sort of a feature request for Scripto, don't come in with, it'd be nice if you could do this. It's like, okay, but why? Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to have whatever this capability you're describing? Like, give us one use case of why this is useful. That frames the discussion really well.
And be expansive on the why, right? It's like, don't just say,
why is the bit we care about.
The why is the bit we really care about, because it's like saying what is often, it narrows the focus of what it with, because a lot of the times it isn't fully understood how you can achieve things in Scripto versus how you achieve them otherwise. So don't just say, I want to be able to do, I want to be able to wrap an NFT, and then I want to be able to set a rule set around it that does this, and I want to be able to do that. It's like, describe what you're trying to achieve. Sorry, I'm repeating what Russell's saying, but it's really important. Be like, I'm trying to create a marketplace for rabbit-based NFTs, and if I get 5 rabbits together in a warren, then they need to produce babies, and like I need to do that. It's like, okay, cool. Now let's approach that from a crypto asset oriented point of view.
I don't know much about rabbits, but there's a couple of sayings which would suggest you don't need to do much if you put 5 rabbits in a warren.
You just get the rabbits. NFTs together and you get more.
It happens.
I kind of want to make a Tribble NFT now.
Oh, what? Sorry?
The Tribble NFT. For that, the Star Trek fans will know what I'm talking about. The Tribble.
Yeah. Yep. End up everywhere.
Yeah.
Trouble with Tribbles, yeah.
Yep.
Piers
is nodding along, like, yes, that
yes,
thing.
I didn't grow up with TV. This
Folks in their 40s who watch television. Yes.
This is literally everything that was cultural that happened between like the ages of me being 0 to 14 goes completely over my head.
It's an ongoing source of horror at the company when we refer to some movie that is completely foundational, and Piers go, "Yeah, I didn't see it." It's like the record stops for me. I'm like, "What do you mean you've never seen Top Gun or whatever it is?" And it's
or when he said he didn't like Predator.
Didn't like Predator.
Yeah, no, that we shouldn't even made that public. That was kind of that's not a thing you should let get public.
Yeah, but
Matt, what's the most helpful activities the community can do running up to Babylon?
Well, so I'm going to go back to my mantra that we're building a movement, not a flash mob. So help us build a movement is the main thing here, and think about how we can build movements. I think, obvious things are, we would love to see there being lots of community run events, meetups, like stuff like, find ways of creating a multiplying effect, find things it's not requiring like RDX Works is doing this thing and we get so many people, like we're trying to do those things, but figure out ways that we can, help us help you. If there are things that we can do to support you to do things that will then have a multiplying effect, and it will take on its life of its own, and that will lead to more people doing that thing. Those sorts of things are extremely helpful. And we're open to proposals on this stuff, and we're already talking about. I think there are already people that are starting to put together meetups. But figure out the way that what's going to be the most impactful thing where you live. Like maybe in your city people do things a certain way. Like they get to, there's this one coffee house where smart people get together every Saturday. And so let's figure out a way of giving a talk of scripta there. Or, in my city, it's a normal thing to post on this one forum and you can collect people together and maybe we can buy pizza for you guys. Whatever it is, help us figure out ways of creating these multiplying effects to build a movement of developers behind Scripto, and also just people that are excited about Web3 and DeFi. And, and we can convince them that that Radix is the platform that's thinking about the problem in the right way.
Adam?
So mine is very simple, which is if I could whisper one word into every single person who knows Radix's ear and get them to do one thing, is tell one person you know.
Really glad you didn't whisper it then. Tell one person.
Yes, that would have been creepy. Please, no. Tell one person, at least one person you know, who would be interested in tech or crypto or finance or anything like that. Tell them about Radix and why you're excited about it. No pressure. Don't try and force them to do anything. Just be like, hey, Radix is cool. This is why, the Radix engine, it's like a game engine for DeFi. Go and check it out. If it's a developer, say hey, I've been looking at Scripture and this asset-oriented approach to building decentralized financial apps. Take a look at it. What do you think? Just do that. If everyone in the community did that to one other person in the next month, hopefully we would double in size straight away. And then if they all do that, that's great. If you want to get bonus points, 2.2 people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you want to get bonus points, 5 people. 5 people this month, as in 5 people in June. If everyone in the community can do that, then that would be amazing. It has referral, word of mouth, talking about things that you already find interesting and cool, has by far and away the biggest effect. I'm going to add to what Matt says and say definitely meetups are incredibly valuable right now. I've definitely told this story before, but the first Ethereum meetup I went to was 12 people. right? And 2 of them were me and my friend. And then 2 of them were people from Ethereum itself. So there's like, 8 people, and 8 people who I didn't know who weren't actually just part of the Ethereum Foundation. And it was in a pub with a sticky floor, but it was amazing. I remember it to this day. I remember the people I met. I remember the conversations I had. Because
and you remember the sticky floor.
I remember the sticky floor. It was definitely sticky. It was a proper British pub.
There's a sticky floors in a British pub are a thing to like. How they get like that, I don't know. I don't want to know.
Certainly not a floor you'd want to lie down on. But it was, like it doesn't have to be big for it to have impact.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here today as a result of that, right? That was part of my journey into crypto, into Web3, into DeFi, into Radix, all of that. So you can have an outside impact on a community, not just by your participation in it, but by the other people that you can bring into that. And people want to be interested. Don't feel like it has to be perfect or well polished or anything like that. It's just, I loved sitting in a room and chatting with people about this new area of technology and why it was exciting. And that is just such a gift you can give to people. And so go organize meetups in your local city, in your local town. And even if it's just like 5 of you sitting around having a chat, that is so impactful in the same way that Adam's tell a friend is impactful.
Piers, one important thing is if people aren't sure how to run a meetup or want to present things in the right way, make sure you reach out to Jacob because he's done a fantastic job of putting together a meetup in a box, which has a whole bunch of slides and ideas and like a checklist to run a really successful meetup really easily. And thank you to everyone who has been doing those. I can't remember off the top of my head all the recent ones, but we're seeing great growth of that. And the feedback from everyone who's run them and attended them is they are great. So honestly, everyone can do it.
And we're putting together a similar thing for developer-oriented stuff too, right? We don't quite have it, but I think pretty soon we're going to have a similar sort of, slide decks, information, videos you can work from. If you're a technical person and want to talk to a technical crowd about crypto, we're going to have something pretty soon.
Awesome. Well, thank you again to everyone in the community who has given these questions. If you want to ask a question at a future roundtable, all you need to do is go into Telegram or go into Discord and hashtag roundtable AMA, and then just stick in your question, and it will be collated together, and we will hopefully get to it in the next one. But thank you, Adam, Matt, Russ, for your time, and until next time.
Bye.